Hi, today we are going to do something different. We're going to solve some simultaneous equations, linear equations to start with. And there are 6 different ways in which we can solve this. Now, what does that really mean when we say we solve linear equations? Well, a linear equation is an equation that can be represented by a line like this. And if you have 2 of those equations, which have a different slope, then at some point they're going to cross one another. And when they say solve linear equations, what they ask you to do is to find the point, the one point where the 2 lines cross. And of course, that point will have an x and a y coordinate. So the whole thing that we're trying to do here is to take 2 equations, and here's an example of 2 equations, and find the place where they cross and find the x and the y axis, or I should say the x and the y coordinate of that particular point. All right, so let's go ahead. We'll go through each one of these methods, and we'll start off with the graphical method. There's my 2 equations. So what we want to do is, since we want to graph them, we want to first write them in the form y equals mx plus b. Remember, that's how we are able to graph linear equations. So taking the first one, I'm going to move the x to the other side, so I end up with a minus y equals minus x plus 1. Remember, when we move something across equal sign, the sign changes. So that becomes a minus x. And since I don't want a minus y, I want a plus y, I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation with a negative 1, or by negative 1. So negative 1 times this, negative 1 times this. And that means my equation becomes y equals x minus 1. All right. Now I'll take my second equation. And here all I have to do is to move the 2x across. So here I end up with a y equals, again, when I cross the equal sign, the sign changes, 2x becomes a minus 2x plus 8. And so now I have my 2 equations, y equals x minus 1 and y equals minus 2x plus 8. So the next thing I'm going to do is graph both of these equations. So I need a coordinate system. I need an x and a y axis. Here's my y axis. There's my x axis. Then I draw a few points on there. So this is a plus 1, plus 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hopefully I don't need more than that. All right. So my first equation, this is my intercept right here. So the plus b is my intercept. That's where the line crosses the y-axis. So negative 1 is down here. And then my slope is plus 1. So this is like a 1x minus 1. So a slope of plus 1 means that I rise 1 and run 1, rise 1, run 1, rise 1, run 1. So when I connect these points together here, this is the line representing this equation. So my y equals x minus 1 is represented by this line. Now I do my second line. Here's my intercept, plus 8. So plus 8 is over here. So I know that this line crosses the y-axis at this point. And my slope is negative 2. That means it drops 2 for every 1 that I go across. So 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, and so forth. If I connect these lines together, or these points together, it looks like that. And notice I found the place where the 2 lines cross. Now, if I come down here, I can see that the x value of that point is 3. If I go across this way, I can see that my y value of that point is 2. So the solution to these 2 equations is 3 for x and 2 for y. Now you might have already noticed that this method, even though it's very straightforward and it's visually easy to follow, it may not always give you the exact answer, because what if the answer was 3.1 and 2.3? You probably wouldn't be able to figure that out here. So it only gives you sometimes an approximate answer. In this case, 3 and 2 are probably the correct answers. If you want to make sure that you got the right answer, you can plug these points back into both of these equations and see if the equation still holds true. So starting with the equation y equals x minus 1, plug in the 3 for x and the 2 for y. So I get a 2 equals 3 minus 1. Yep, that looks correct. So that's a good sign. Taking my second equation, y equals minus 2x plus 8. If I plug in 3 for x and 2 for y, so 2 equals minus 2 times 3 plus 8. So 2 equals minus 6 plus 8, and that looks correct as well. And so it looks like this case I found the correct answers.